Okay, this is Side Stories, a podcast about people where I find people I find interesting. And today I'm here with Monoinsomniac. Where to begin? How would you describe your channel, I suppose?
It's most like a vent channel, but it's like with a huge emphasis on like men's issues and stuff I feel mostly men have to go through.
Yeah, why that kind of strain, I suppose?
I just feel that men's issues are not really talked about as much as women's issues nowadays, and there's not really a space to talk about it. So kind of what I'm doing right now.
So you're trying to like create that space in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of YouTube channels of men talking about their issues popping up a lot, and I feel that's the reason why because there's not much other spaces to talk about it.
But I'm kind of curious like what you go to is like what are men's issues in the current time?
Well, just loneliness and I'd say I would argue there's a lot of like systemic issues men have to go through, and I would say like for me personally, autism is a big one because autism affects men more, and I argue that the symptoms are much stronger in men than in women, from my personal experience, at least.
Oh, okay. Have you met like women with autism?
Yeah, I've met them, and I feel they have a much easier time socializing. Of course, there's always there's always what's the word again? It's always outliers, but usually it's they tend to have it easier socializing because the symptoms aren't as strong as it compared to men, and that's why I why it's tends to be harder to diagnose women as autistic compared to men.
Do you think that's an interesting point. Do you think society treats women with autism different than men?
Yeah, I argue that. I mean, I think especially in media such as anime, like shy anime girls are seen as like cute and everything, but shy anime guys are like kind of seen as opposite. They're seen as like creepy or they're seen as weirdos, just bad examples.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at, and I agree with you a little bit that society tends to overlook the negative symptoms of autism in women as being traits of like kind of femininity, of like kind of being quiet, respectful. I guess to play in a modern meme, very demure and mindful, right? Like they're not saying anything, but maybe they just not don't say anything because I don't know, they don't know what to say, right? The classic like autism scenario is like I don't know what to do or say at a time like this. Like that's a quote
Mm.
from Ray Ayanami.
Oh,
And I think,
yeah.
do you think Ray from Ava? Have you seen Evangelion?
Oh, yeah. It's one of my favorite anime.
Okay, perfect.
I
We're gonna.
mean, I mean, Shinji is like I think Shinji is my favorite character because I think Evangelion is an example of like how like men are treated in society. I mean, there's a scene that I keep replaying over and over again from Evangelion where Shinji is like, "Oh, my only purpose in life is to pilot the Eva because people respect me because I'm sacrificing myself for the supposed greater good of humanity." I mean, that's one of those things that not many people talk about. I mean, it's related to today because men are only like seen as like useful if they achieve something and they may make a name for themselves or if they sacrifice themselves. I mean, that anime is like just an example of that.
Yeah, yeah. Like kind of. Well, I have a follow up question on that, but the reason I brought up Evangelion is I want to ask: do you think Ray Ayanami was autistic? Or do you at
I
least like
don't.
autistic coded kind of? I don't know. I mean, I know obviously in the actual lore of the show there's a lot to consider, but just in terms of the surface level, I suppose.
I don't have much to say about her character. I mean, it's a really complex character. I mean, she's not really exactly like the most human character. I mean, in terms of like what her background is. I mean, I'm more
Yeah.
interested in terms of like Evangelion girls. I'm more interested in terms of Asuka's character.
Yeah, why so?
I mean, like, I mean, she has like a personality where she's not really treating people well, but then you find out later what her childhood was like. I mean, you don't really see much anime girls being portrayed like that.
the you know in she kind of presents as like the ginky, I don't know, maybe tomboy kind of, I suppose. I'm not too good on terms, so correct me when I'm saying everything wrong. But right, she kind of presents as this like stereotypical anime girl who's exciting, gonna come in and kind of almost like a manic pixie dream girl, right?
I'm not stereotypical. I mean, the way she's like portrayed is that she's like Shinji. She feels like she has to like prove herself. She has to prove that she's independent. She wants to be independent, and that scene where like her flashbacks are being exposed. That's kind of what I tend to like think about.
Yeah, like she has an internal motivation to be recognized
Yeah,
because her mom in the end stages, I guess spoilers for Evangelion, but in the end stages of her mom's life, her mom didn't even recognize her as a human anymore. Her mom was like spending all of her time on this doll, so like she has Asuka develops this kind of like, I guess an older psychological term would be like a complex of like needing validation from external sources.
yeah. I mean, I could tell that anime is basically written by a guy because that's kind of like what that tends to be like a problem men have to go through, just having to like show how they're independent. I mean, historically, women are only expected to like become like the housewives and just to like look good for themselves to in order to like attract a provider.
Do you think is that what women want?
What do you mean that? I mean, for the most part, like I argue that women tend to like want. That's why I see like women like liking the more famous men than regular men because they really, in my opinion, they like status more. I mean, I've seen it time and time again. I mean, of course, there's always outliers, but for the most part, they like status.
Yeah, yeah. Although there's not enough famous people for all the women to go around, I suppose, right? There's just kind
Of
of
course, it's not.
yeah, it's like a top
Yeah,
heavy pyramid.
yeah, because they like to go for the cream of the crop.
What about you? What do you like to go for? Do you go for anything?
I'm not even interested in relationships. I mean, in my opinion, I can't really afford relationships at this time.
You think how much? What do you think a relationship costs? I suppose.
I tend to see relationships as transactional. Mean, I think it to me it costs a lot of money, and I have to like perform a lot and endure things. And women tend nowadays they would claim that they're for men's mental health. They feel men should open up more, but yet in person, whenever I open up, they don't seem to take it well. I mean, I don't mean like trauma dumping or whatever. I mean just seeing simple problems like me not having friends or struggles fitting into the job market. Just simple struggles like that. It doesn't have to be like the traumatic ones. It doesn't have to be like the worst types of mental health. It just be simple problems, and it'll kind of turn them off.
Oh, gives them the ick kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a video I saw about like how men opening up gives women the ick, and this YouTuber showed proof of that.
Did you do you have a story like that? Are you gonna like make a video about your experience with that?
I mean, I sort of did on one of my last videos about my time on the Discord server.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I opened up at the correct place, and yet they kind of had the ick for me.
I watched part of it. I didn't watch all of it. I was I had other motivations, I suppose.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you get where would you get say you get the predominance or like the most of like your kind of information? I mean, it sounds like a mix of like you had some bad experiences, but then you also like watch a lot of stuff that
Well,
validates that, right?
my bad experience kind of like led me, kind of like took me all the way over here because it's those fall around the rabbit hole moments. I mean, I've been a member of this community called the cosplay community for a long time. I don't like to talk much about like what I've done in the community or what I've dressed up as because that's got kind of like gonna make my probably gonna like expose me a bit. But from my experience, I just saw a lot of things that didn't really seem to add up. I mean, why were women not as shamed? Why were autistic women having an easier time socializing with each other? Why all these things? Why were like just random men being like randomly accused of harassment or anything just for no reason? I mean, why is there so much drama? Like, and then it just led me to all the way over here.
I'm not too familiar with the cosplay scene, so I wouldn't know too much, but it seems to be kind of adjacent to a lot of kind of internet culture, right? Where there's that classic meme of like, oh, have you seen? I don't know. Do you know who King Cobra JFS is?
I don't know who that
Oh,
person is.
okay. Christian Weston Chandler. I think she changed her name actually. It's like the
No,
Sonic shoe. Okay, never mind. Doesn't matter. Anyway, but it's like this meme.
well,
Oh,
I know Sonic Shoe, but I don't know who that person is.
oh, okay. But yeah, it's like this meme where it's like an autistic girl, and she's like, "Ooh, I'm getting like some fidget tingles or something. I forget what it's called." And then it's like autistic guy, and he's like just screaming with his like lips out, and he just looks ridiculous and silly. And I think you're kind of right where there is more behavioral displays and kind of social deficits that are more pronounced in men than they are in women. And I think a lot of that kind of has to do with like society kind of tends to overlook those deficits, but also tends to kind of like placate the deficit or make up for them, right? Like
I
it,
guess.
yeah, like there's a kind of thing in ADHD where men usually I mean this is in boys, but they get diagnosed with hyperactivity. But ADHD is also inattentive, so you can have hyperactivity, you can have inattentive, or you can have comorbid or co-occurring or whatever. And women usually have inattentive type, which means that they're kind of like aloof and they struggle to kind of pay attention to social cues. But inattentive ADHD can also look like autism. But the problem is like in girls that they're more likely to get assigned ADHD inattentive than they are assigned an autism diagnosis. That's kind of a problem with the field in general, just because of like payment, insurance, and reimbursement. You can't really get good reimbursement for treating autism as you can for treating mental health, unfortunately, just because autism isn't seen as something that can be. How insurance works is like you can get paid to treat something that can be fixed, but autism isn't considered something that could ever be fixed. So it's not the payment system for it through insurance isn't the same as like somebody who has depression and you could like be kind of cured in air quotes of depression. So there's this kind of like top down systemic issue that's putting girls in identifiable fields of having ADHD instead of like having autism, even though they might actually have that. It's a, I don't know, interesting kind of development, I suppose. But so you've had your experiences and you watch this content. Do
Hmm.
you do you find, because you kind of mentioned like going down the rabbit hole, do you find that you like there is some benefit to that for you, I imagine, seeing those things and getting and seeing the people who have those stories? What would you say that is for you the most, seeing that content, seeking that out?
I mean, it just kind of made sense to me because I also back then I used to be like a what we like to call a trad con. I mean, I used to be all into all this conspiracy stuff and just all this so-called freedom movement stuff. But then I realized how like there are things that just made me feel like I do not belong there. One, like the way they saw men in the freedom movement, they just saw them as like providers, or they must have to prove themselves. They have to prove they're independent. They have to like get rich, and they don't really like autistic men either. I mean, and they talk about like about you know, so supposed link between autism and you know what I don't want to say it, but But the problem is like they just have a lot of high expectations for men, and I don't buy into the traditional gender roles that they promoted.
Why not?
Well, because traditional gender roles don't really fit me. I mean, it's if you think about traditional gender roles are kind of like slavery for men. I mean, men have to like perform above in order to like attract a partner, and also like basically like in practice are kind of seen as ATM machines and pretty much cannon fodder during hard times. I mean, that's what traditional gender roles I feel does to men, and not many people talk about that. I mean, traditional gender roles kind of like declares that men do not have much of a right to live as women do, and they would like argue say, oh, because men are on average physically stronger than women. But to me that should not mean that men's lives should be valued less. I mean, I feel that all our lives should be valued equally.
Okay, that's an interesting story. I wasn't expecting to hear that. So it sounds like you kind of recognize you used to be kind of deeper into these groups, and then realized that you could never even belong there. They wouldn't even have you, right? Like they would deny you
Yeah, I mean,
entry.
yeah, because I've had experience with these groups. I mean, during the you know what era, the early 2020s. I don't want to talk about much that area, but I've ended up having some experience with these groups, and just I just felt really dehumanized in those groups. I mean, I didn't feel like I was like I'm seen as the gender. I mean, I felt like I had to prove myself in order to be seen as the gender, even though they say that even though these people claim they're against men transition to women, they at the same time these people say that oh men must do this in order to be seen as so-called real men.
Oh, that's yeah. I never thought about that. Right in the same way that they deny transgenderism, they're also kind of creating their own transgenderism, right? Because instead of being like a thing where I can go from a man to a woman, I need to go from guy to man, right? Like I need to make some kind of proof that I am a man, whatever that means, right?
Yeah, just basically like they're threatening to deny like men the gender they were actually born with.
The so you recognize that their ideology wasn't really that beneficial to you, but also like it wasn't something that you could measure up to in a sense, right? And I'm not trying to like put weight on any of that being good or bad or whatever. It's just kind of how you experienced it. But when when you leave that group, then is that when you made the transition to this kind of maybe softer approach? Would you call it?
It's not a
Or
softer approach. I mean, it's not really a softer approach. I'll say it's much harder, sort of a harder approach. I mean, but I don't know how to describe it. But I mean, I
well,
just found these videos I've been watching like by chance. I mean, it kind of led. I think the one thing that led me to these videos was the thing about like male circumcision
okay.
and how it's like to me it's genital mutilation, and that's sort of how it led me to what I've been watching right now.
Okay, yeah. I wanna track back a little bit though. I mean, what I mean by softer approach is like if you were in a community that was tradcon that wants clear defined gender roles, that the man goes out and works and then the woman is like a homemaker, that's a pretty hard approach. That's like a policy level kind of approach, right? Where we want to reshape society in this
I mean,
specific image, right?
yeah,
And right now
yeah, because
it's
I
right.
want like a simple approach. I mean, a man should be a man he was like if he was should at least be a man if he was born a man and lived and basically lived and if he made the transition from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, I think that's what should be defined as a man to me.
Okay, yeah. I guess what I mean by softer approach is that like instead of like advocating for people to fit into certain things, you're kind of just saying there's a problem going on with people that deserves attention. Right.
Yeah,
Like
and I,
you.
and I argue that they don't really have the same type of standards for women either. I mean, they're a bit more relaxed with women. I mean, they don't call out like women being tomboys. I mean, yet they call out men being like feminine. I mean, men could just be slightly interested in something that women tends to be into, and then they're just called a femboy.
Yeah. Have you seen what was it? Have you seen the OK Cupid studies? Are you familiar
No,
with
I haven't
these?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
What was it about?
Um, so I'm an old. Do you know what R9K is on 4chan?
No.
Okay. Oh man, I'm an old school. I'm an old school incel. I mean, I'm not an incel, actually. But I was like I get technically involuntary celibate for like 7 years. So
I prefer not to use that term because I feel that term has kind of lost its meaning nowadays. I mean, it doesn't the way people like use that term, they don't really mean by men who are just frustrated with their romantic life. I mean, I feel that like nowadays, like men could just talk about like how they're struggling the job market, and then people just call them that.
oh,
I mean,
like it, like people
I've
kind of
seen,
throw
I've
it
seen it
around.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just say like we just another way for them saying that, oh, we don't want to hear about your problems. We don't like it when you're like this.
Yeah, it's a way. It can be a way to kind of like stifle conversation or like shut down something without actually listening or hearing or processing what the problem
Yeah.
was. Yeah,
Hmm.
totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, in my own usage of the word, I'm just being in the most literal sense, like somebody who just can't find somebody else to have sex with in any capacity.
Hmm.
But anyway, so these OkCupid studies basically, what they did was is that they just like revealed all this data about like the dating that was going on in OkCupid back when the website slash maybe app I guess was relevant. And there turns out that people are really fucking racist and really shitty to each other. So like one of the results was that every group of women across all races prefer to receive and respond to messages strictly from white men. Another one was how men rated women. Men rated women on like a really even curve from like people at ones, two, three, fours, and fives, and women only rated men either like a five or like nothing, or like a one. There was just like a gulf. It was like an inverse of the men's rating. I'm trying to think. I think, oh man, I don't know. There's a lot, but basically, it kind of confirms a lot of suspicions and biases and unfair things I think that a lot of men struggle with in the world. But there's a context to that, right? Where it's like you're on internet dating in like this was like circa 2014 or something, maybe a little bit later. So like men are more online on this platform than women. So like women can afford to be picky in that situation. So it kind of it's some interesting data, I suppose. I would say if you want to ruin your mood, go look up the OkCupid studies. They actually like took it all down because people were using it to like fuel old school incel like arguments and memes and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's like this thing going around the quote unquote black pill community. It's called like they use this term called like JBW, aka just be white, and they use that as an argument for like why like quote unquote like passport bros seem to like be popular among women in like in Southeast Asia countries like countries from areas such as Southeast Asia. So I think that's what they do. They kind of like use that as an argument for like why they like these like white male influencers get popular among those type of women. But that's all I have to say. I mean, I don't really have much to say about the racial stuff.
Yeah, it's more of just a kind of I don't know. There's not really a whole lot you can do about it. I mean, I think anyone can be attractive. Anyone can get with anyone. But when you put it on like that dating platform, I guess it becomes you get some interesting information. Have you ever used like a dating app before?
Well, I mean, sort of have, but I wasn't really doing that just to get like just to get a relationship. I mean, I was like sort of in like a autism dating app, but I wasn't there to get in a relationship. I mean, even though my parents told me that dating apps are not just for relationships, but they're not. I don't think they're right about that. I tend to argue with them over that because that's not how people use dating apps. I
Like
mean,
what? So what were you
what?
what were you using it for then, or what were your parents encouraging you to use it for?
Just to find like just to find connections.
Yeah, yeah. And what did your parents think it was for, or that you didn't agree with?
Well, they thought dating apps are not just for dating, and from my experience, that's not true.
Oh, so you also kind of wanted to find like connection, but you weren't able to find it, so it seemed like most people were just there for the dating then. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for the most part, like, that's why people are on dating apps. I don't, I don't understand. I don't know what makes them think that way, but people are on dating apps just to find dating. That's why they're called dating apps.
Yeah. Although, but you said you were looking for a connection, so what's the
Just
difference,
like
I suppose?
a
Yeah.
friendship.
Oh. Did you find a friend?
Uh, not really. I mean, then again, it's really hard to like make friends where I live.
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't have to like give any information you're not comfortable with. But I'll share kind of in that same vein. I used to live in like a 10,000 person town, and so I was doing the same thing you were doing. I would go on OkCupid, like a decade plus ago, and I would just like find people across the world. And I ended up making a few friends. There was usually always something wrong with these people though. Almost invariably there was something wrong with their mental every time. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of any way possible. You just look for connection in the world. Do you think is it like a population issue kind of where you live? Do you feel like that's part of it?
There's several reasons. I mean, I live in like a densely populated region in the U.S. and there's a lot of factors. I mean, one, where I live, it's a commuter city, so people are only there to just commute to the big city, and there's not major spaces. Another reason is that I argue that where I live, like for men at least, you have to like you have to like be useful for networking in order to have connections. You have to be seen as useful or anything. You have to make a name for yourself. Because here, like people like want to like get opportunities in tech or whatever. So it's especially when you're at least we turn 18. I mean, that was my experience at university. Like people only like want to make friends if you are like you know what you're doing in university, or if you if you if you're useful to their career goals.
Yeah, there definitely are some people like that, and there's people who aren't like that too. It can be kind of hard to find them, I suppose. I de- I had that happen one time too, where some guy after graduating, this guy was a total fucking slacker. I don't know what his problem was, but he messaged me like on LinkedIn or something, asking me if I could like hook him up with a job, and it was like, dude, you abandoned me during our Italian project to go like flirt with two girls. Why the hell would I ever give you a job? Like it kind of goes both ways. Where like if you act shitty, well then I'm not going to do anything for you if I had anything to offer that guy, right?
Hmm.
So you mentioned third spaces, and that kind of I did watch your video where you kind of went into why therapy didn't work out for you. And so I think it's interesting you mentioned the third spaces because that what the female therapist suggested to you was that to like kind of go hang out like in the world at like a coffee shop.
Yeah, because I was in university at the time. It was a really lonely experience, and where I went to university, it's not a university like let's say let's say University of Pennsylvania where it's in the middle of the city. The university I went to is like it's like in a suburban area, albeit a safe area, but it's still suburban and it's pretty much spread out. But the coffee shop in the university, people only use it for studying, and there's not many seats available.
But what about like that's like the specific thing. Like you have like a specific issue because like it sounds like she was like wrong about that location. But what about like the general idea? I mean, it sounds like you kind of already explained it though. Like it's a suburban kind of like commuter town. There's a lot of like through traffic, but not like people who are just there. So people who are there, they're there for a specific intention. But
Yeah,
I don't know. Are you familiar with the word serendipity?
I've heard that word, but I haven't like looked into the meaning yet.
Yeah, it's basically just kind of like luck. It's just kind of like good fortune or just like, being in the right place at the right time. Do you like do you ever kind of venture out into the world with that hope, I guess, of just having like a serendipitous moment, like something good will happen? Or do you how doomerism, I guess, is your thinking, I suppose?
I mean, sometimes I want to have feel that way, but at the same time, I mean, the way like things are set up nowadays, I mean, I agree that like for men, we're not like allowed to be late bloomers, and that's I guess why, in my opinion, why like autistic men are not like seen as anything positive, don't have much positive portrayals because we don't like develop as fast as our peers typically do. Because because like here's one proof I have that like you're not allowed to be late bloomer. Basically, like just you see job posting and they want a lot of experience and stuff. That's one proof that we don't live in a society where you're allowed to be a late bloomer or just figure out yourself later in life.
When did you go to school? Did you go right out of high school or go to college? I mean, sorry.
Well, after I went to like a small private high school, and then it's not an elite private school, just a special needs private school. And
Okay.
then I went to community college for a few years, and then I transferred to university, and then I graduated.
Transferring can be pretty disruptive for like social connections. Did you have any that got disrupted, or like was one? Did you notice any difference between the two schools?
Mm, I mean, the only difference I could really say between the two schools was that one was in the middle of the city, and the other one was in that suburban area, which is much safer. But still, I mean, I didn't really enjoy my time in either places. I was only there because I felt there was like no other. I didn't really feel like I have another option. Like everyone else, like if I say like if you don't go to university, you're gonna be working at Walmart or McDonald's the rest of your life. That's kind of why I was there.
To kind of give yourself a better opportunity, which kind of, I mean, it feeds into your worldview, right? Where it's like, well, if I want someone to be with me, I have to be somebody worth being with, right? Like that's like the neutral view of it. Like kind of what you're saying is like men need to provide, but
I mean, I'm not really interested in relationships to begin with. I wasn't really interested back then either, but
if
I mean, like it's still like I was kind of in university because I was told to be there.
oh
I
like
didn't have an alternative path.
like parental pressure.
I mean, it's kind of parental pressure, but I mean, just the way, but still, just how like because they wanted me to get a degree because they didn't have a college degree, even though they were doing fine without their degrees.
So it's not as much the relationship stuff, although a lot of the men's rights stuff is framed in that way, right? Where there's kind of like a competition between men and women in terms of like the expectations, the unfairness. Men get to go die in wars, women get to like stay home. Like, are you familiar with? There's like the famous Hillary Clinton quote or tweet, which is like, "Women are the bigger losers in wars because they lose their husbands," and it's like, lady, the man is dead. Like,
Yeah,
if you're dead, you literally get to do nothing. Like, I think most people would choose to be alive and sad than just straight up dead, unless you're like, severely depressed.
yeah, but
So,
it's just it's not just like a showsman face, but it's also like the systemic stuff that not many people talk about. I mean, there's this there's this like story of like this person named like Nora Vincent, and she's like tried like develop an understanding of men by disguising herself as a man, and then she found out that she liked her time as a woman better, and but and she did because she felt that not many people talk about men's issues, and not many people want to like have a deeper understanding of men. They A lot of people just assume that that men are this, men are that. I mean, she wasn't like perfect her understanding, but like she at least tried to like make an effort to understand. Like, unfortunately, she's not with us nowadays. But
Yeah, that's I've heard of this experiment. It was quite interesting.
mhm.
Usually, it kind of gets your framing of it. I think was kind of quite kind. Usually, the framing of it that I see is that it's like it, it's it's a bunch of guys laughing at how weak women are and they couldn't handle how hard it is to be a man, and which is a little ignorant to imply that women don't also have problems to go through. I mean, part of the reason women don't just have part of the biological differences, I suppose, make it so that there's a greater risk for women in terms of like sex than men, right? Because a guy can have sex and just leave, but the woman could get pregnant or have like health complications with uh, anything related to that as well that make that like a huge risk, right?
Well, I mean, I think people talk about that too much. They don't want to talk about like what men have to go through when women get pregnant. And I
So
feel that
what does
that's
the man go through?
well, I mean, just brand new expectations, and also like if the man does not perform well, then he ends up like losing losing his wife and even like his kids via child support, and he has to pay child support.
A man always has to pay child support.
Well, most of the time he has to.
I think usually if usually if like wherever the kid's living, the other person pays monetary support. It kind of works out that way that the man ends up not taking care of the kid. What would you think would be more fair? I suppose, like in terms of like that child care piece of things. Like, there's a separation between a man and a woman, and there's a kid. Like with the money, finances, and like who takes care of the kid. What do you think would be more fair?
Well, I think what will be more fair is that like, but I argue that like no, that for the most part, men are always seen as to blame for like relationship failing, even that's even cases where like it wasn't their fault the relationship failed. I mean, that's how I see it.
So it's not. So I mean, well, in a divorce, there's not unless a divorce it says somebody unless somebody commits like a crime in the divorce. Like some states criminalize adultery, but there's not like a fault finding. Usually, it's there's like irreconcilable differences, right? So like like if the traditional separation is like the kid is at the woman's place more than the man's, and then the man provides financial support because of this. What would be, I guess, better to you? What do you think would be more fair?
Well, I mean, I think there should at least be some fairness in the courts. I mean, usually like men are the ones that usually like lose the most when it comes to divorce. I mean, in my opinion, I argue that like divorce hurts men more than women, and usually when there's like a case where who gets the kids, they're not usually men lose the kids, and he has to pay all the child support.
Why do you think men lose more?
Well, I mean, I think it's just structural problems. Just I don't think we live in a fair society.
Have you do you know anyone who's gone through a divorce?
Um, I don't not at the top of my head, but this is kind of related. But I did have an uncle who was sent who was got in prison for 10 years just for so called threatening someone. I mean, it was just threatening. I was all I was told. He was threatening someone, and he got automatically 10 years in prison. That was another thing that kind of shaped my worldview.
That is interesting. Um, there's definitely more to the story there, because I wonder what the maximum you can get for a threat anywhere is. I don't even imagine that it would be longer than 2 years at most. So, I guess depending on the location, though, I do know like I think like California has like a two three strikes you're out kind of thing where like depending on how many like past convictions you have, if you have like a third one, then they like take all the unspent time in prison, because like you can do like a crime and you can be like sentenced, but you can have like probation instead, and then you don't actually have like the time in prison, and that can just kind of be like lingering over your head, like if you fuck up on your rules of supervision while you're on probation. So I mean that would be an instance where that would make sense to me, but I don't like, I know a guy. I used to work at halfway houses that treated people with substance use that had criminal histories, and the only person who had 10 years that I knew was a guy who had attempted murder. So yeah, when I hear a story of somebody getting 10 years for a threat, either that threat was so legitimate that it was about to be like made true in that moment, like they had a gun, or there's a lot more to the story there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I would that would be something I would question a lot, I suppose. But I,
Yeah,
so
and
so
also like, and I also remember reading an article like about like what causes divorce, and one of the reasons that kind of struck me was like financial reasons. I mean, that kind of like struck me because it just me it just shows that how much a man can provide has to provide for the relationship and stuff.
you think you think like the financial reason for the divorce was because the man wasn't providing? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Or that was
that's how I theorize based on like if the main data says that like the reason why we're divorced is financial related reason, then that's one guess I can make.
okay. I think usually when I see like that reason, to my understanding, it's kind of related to like 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 fights over money. Like the couple, the two people cannot figure out how to manage their shared joint finances, which is being a person. Well, I personally have not had that issue in my relationships, but because I communicate well and am a mature adult, so I've never had that issue. But I've talked to a lot of people. I've known a lot of adults in my line of work, and that is like a common theme. I mean, that was like my whole parents' problem growing up mostly. Like,
Mm.
so that would be my take on it. I think is that like stress related to finances and like fighting over like what they're spending their money on, right? Because it's like you have this pooled asset essentially, right? Which is the money. Two people are bringing it in potentially, and it's like, what do you do with it? How do you spend it, right? So you I'm curious about like in which way I want to follow up just on the divorce in the courts. Like you think it's like unfair, but like do you, like I know a lot about divorce actually, and so like how it is I don't know whatever state you live in, maybe it's different, but in the state of Wisconsin, because my parents got divorced, and it's just straight down the middle 50-50 regardless of what happened, no matter what. The other person could be the worst person in the world, but all the money earned in the relationship gets split 50-50. And in this instance, it actually fucked my dad over than my mom, because my mom quit her job and was just maxing out all of her credit cards. So my dad had to like pay off my mom essentially. He had to give over a bunch of the money that he had earned. But that's just how it works. It's just 50-50. And then you have to like write out the assets that you're transferring over, and then you sign it, and then the court says, okay, you agree to this, this is okay to you, and then you say okay, and then that's it. Honestly, you could probably do less than 50-50, but I the court might reject it. So
Mm.
I I guess the understanding, like, is there a part of divorce somewhere that kind of that you think is like unfair at like a legal level, or is it kind of more of like the child kind of like that part of thing?
It's a lot like that the child's part kind of part of thing because I mean I argue that like men are the ones that lose a lot like financially in terms of divorce from what I see.
They lose a lot, but why do you think? I guess I mean I have an answer and I don't know. Okay, I get my answer is that men lose a lot because they have more. Like the man loses more because he has more. That's just the fact, right? Like my dad lost more money because he had more money. It wasn't fair, but it had nothing to do with his gender. It was just the fact that he had more money, right? Like it could have been the fact that my dad was an asshole, my mom was like professional and competent or whatever. Like that's just how it played out. Like they're like I don't know. I guess that's my understanding. It's just men just happen to have more. Like sometimes society pushes men to strive for more, but there's also like a lot of history there. So I guess like do you, I want to.
I don't think it's as simple as I wouldn't say it's as simple as that.
Well, what do you think it is? Like why do you think men lose more? Because like there isn't anything putting pressure on a man to lose more than 50%. So in order to lose more, when there's a 50% split, the man has to have more that he's brought in, right? Like I don't.
I mean, I just argue that men have to are the ones that have to pay for all the damages, even if it's the divorce is not their fault.
Well, what are the damages that need to be paid for?
Just like child support. I mean, just them having not being allowed to see their kids.
Well, a man is
That's a common
only
it's a
well
common theme I see a lot.
well in divorce, a man is only ever forbidden from seeing the kids for cause. So a man can't see his kids if there is reason that seeing them would just be harmful. If a divorce is done amicably and both people are mature and responsible, you don't get there's different levels of it, but basically, if you have an amicable divorce, it's called placement, which just says the kids are going to be at this parent's house on these days, and the kids are going to be at this parent's house on these days, and then they're going to alternate weekends or like whatever, and then that's just how it's solved. Is if men can't see their kids, it's because the man fucked up. Like that, there is never I would love to see that courtroom where a man it was a competent, non-abusive person, and then also didn't get to see their kids. There is just nothing legally speaking that would prevent or make a judge have that result. Like I've never seen that in the real life. I know there's things online, but like in my real life, working with adults and parents who have gone through divorce and things, I've never seen that. So I find that to be it's one of those things online that just doesn't match to the reality. Like there's always more to the story, you know. Do you ever? I guess that's a question I have. Do you ever wonder about the authenticity of the things that you like kind of see online?
Well no, but at the end of the day, but here's another problem I have. I mean, like from my experience in the cosplay community, like women could just make up stories about like being harassed, and then everyone believes them, even if it's not true. I mean, the same could be said for something like that. I mean, we might not get to know the full story, but like also we might not get to know who's lying or not. But I know from like my personal experiences that 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 there's like this that one that there's like one of the genders that could like make stuff up, and I mean, I mean, from my experience, like women could just talk about like how they were harassed and stuff, and they would get a lot of sympathy. But yet, a guy could talk about how lonely he is, and he would not get as much sympathy. I mean, that's what I know for sure about my experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Is that why you don't do the cosplay stuff anymore? Or it sounded
I mean,
like you didn't.
I still sort of do it, but I'm kind of like I'm feeling out of touch with the community. I mean, it's gone to a bit consumerist based.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a huge like financial what do I want to say? I mean, it's like an artistic endeavor mostly, but there's also like money that goes into like a good cosplay, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know. I don't do anything art wise. I'm not an artist by any means. So, oh, I guess. I had a few questions I wrote down too that I wanted to ask. That's more about your channel, but I kind of wanted to. It I kind of want to ask the same question I asked the other time. Is like, do you you point a lot to like these unfair experiences between men and women, and you want
Yeah.
validation for the men, but do you think it's unfair the level of like kind of I guess like reverence women hold in society?
Yeah, it's pretty. I would say it's pretty unfair. The
So
empathy gap is, in my opinion, is really not a fair thing.
so do you in balancing that, do you see it as men going up, getting more empathy, like men going up, women going down? Like how do you balance those scales?
Oh, it's what I feel that women are going up and men are just being held back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Like so that's how things seem to be, right? So like what do you think balances that? What do you think makes that fair? Do you think men should just rise up to the level that women are? Do you think women need to come down to the level of empathy that they receive from society? Like what how would you make that fair?
There should just be equality at least.
Okay, so they should be equal, but I guess like
I don't mean like equal in terms like men and women are the exact same thing. I mean in terms of I just mean like in terms of like how we're treated and
yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. I guess what I'm saying is, do you think, because like when I hear the statement like, oh, like a woman can make an accusation and people will believe her, I feel like I'm hearing like we should have suspicion about women being victims of sexual assault or violence. And that is a really dangerous road to go down, I think, because if like obviously
well,
there is the negative of
men have experienced the sexual violence and we're and not many men talk about the experience because we're not really like listened to as much.
yeah. Yeah. So do you think that women shouldn't be able to make accusations as freely, I suppose. I don't know. I feel like you're I don't know. I'm kind of curious.
Well, the thing with accusations is that accusations really like hurt you, it hurt men because usually like for the most part women are believed and there's a lot of like ramifications men have to go to. Like one, men are ostracized from say the communities they're part of, and there's also financial implications as well. I mean men could lose a lot of money, and also like there and some men even like commit suicide over false accusations because they can't take the treatment they were getting.
How often do you think false accusations, I guess, occur?
I would say like more than we think.
Are you
Because
Yeah.
to me like the types of men that get accused of things, there it's usually like neurodivergent men like me because we're not like great at socializing. And it's also like men who are not like as famous, but even like famous men they get falsely accused, and that just destroys reputation. And usually like in the society we don't like the way society handles it. It's like you're guilty until proven innocent. It's not innocent until proven guilty for men, even though in America it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah. I mean, the disparity there is that one of them is the standard for legal, right? Like you're innocent until proven guilty in a legal sense. But like
The
I'm
way
trying to
they're
like
treated, treated,
like
it's not
social,
innocent.
yeah. Well, I mean, in
Mhm.
that instance, if somebody defames you in such a way that ruins your reputation, I mean, then you just like sue them in civil court. I mean, obviously that requires money, right? But that's really the only recourse.
Yeah, and usually like I argue that the courts are not in favor of men, so
I,
it's not easy for men to just prove they to just prove their innocence.
well, in that in a So in a civil suit for defamation, you wouldn't need to prove innocence. Yeah, um, you need to prove harm. So in the instance like what you're talking about, like if a woman, like let's say tomorrow, a female coworker who I never interact with said that I did something horrible to her, and I lose my job, then I would just go after her in a defamation case, because I lost, and I can be like, the harm that's been done is I lost my job over this accusation that never occurred. This thing never occurred. And then I would just have to come up with some kind of evidence that like what I was doing whatever day, right? Like she would have to have some story to say that like validates, when the assault took place, right? And she would have to hope that somehow, that and also like going through all these lies, right? Like what motivates somebody to do that? Like, I guess I'm kind of back at my first question is that, do you? It sounds like you want everyone should be believed. Is that kind of the standard you think is fair? I suppose. Like, do you think everyone should be believed when it comes to like making like, I guess not accusations, but just like stories of being a victim of some type of sexual assault or violence?
I think everyone should be believed, but also like I think just the way this like false accusations happen, what's it's done, it feels like I just feel like I'm walking on eggshells on my life. I don't feel like I just feel that's what it feels like to me. I'm walking on eggshells, and I have to like try to mask myself to the point where I'm suffocating.
It's interesting. I think that you say that. I mean, I can understand, why, given, what you shared about and, being on the spectrum and all that. And I mean, I
Hmm.
think I think myself, it was a bit on the spectrum, but in a lot of different ways. But so, I mean, it sounds like a lot of these things kind of personally affect you, and you find, community in like how other people have been affected, and not really having recourse against it, right? Like there's not like something you can appeal to be like, no, this person was wrong, or I didn't mean that, or nobody's gonna believe me because, look at me compared to this other person. People are more empathetic towards them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's like when you try to prove yourself, it ends up like becoming like a it ends up becoming a tug of war, and usually like you'll tend to side with the accuser, from my experience. Usually like it's from what I see, it looks really energy draining to just try to like just prove your innocence.
Yeah, I mean, once people have an opinion or once they have a belief of somebody, it's really hard to break out of that. So,
And then you have like these motivational speakers online saying that, oh, don't care about what people think. Well, I mean, like a lot of them just don't like they don't really seem to empathize. Like, unfortunately, we live in a society where the way people think of you is really has an effect on your on your chances in life.
yeah, I mean, yeah, anyone who says don't care what others think is just selling snake oil. I mean, humans are social creatures. I mean, that's part of the reason why the human brain is so has like so complicated. There's so many folds is because it had to develop social reasoning. Like social reasoning was like one of the biggest things that monkeys had to like learn and develop for like their own brains. Like
Hmm.
that's the thing that like makes the brain as complex and big as it is because social reasoning takes up so much damn space because it's so
Hmm.
much in the moment as opposed to like all other types of reasoning or thinking where you can kind of like I can think of a math problem ten years ago, that's not going anywhere. But if I'm having a conversation with somebody, my brain needs to be activated on all fronts so I can have a proper conversation. Otherwise I'm going to look like a ding dong, like.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, whenever I hear somebody say, "Oh, don't care what other people think," there is a strain of that I think that's kind of healthy, where it's like, oh, like don't be insecure maybe, but like you absolutely need to take feedback. Otherwise, like, you're not going to get anywhere in life. Like you need other people to do things. Like nobody can do anything on their own. I'm kind of curious, what video have you made you would say that you're most proud of?
Probably the before you call men losers video. I mean, it was just me taking a stand on this society and just how like just the unrealistic expectations people have on men, and I'm not sure if you watched that one, but
No, I'm trying to find. Oh, I see it. Oh, it has some pretty good views too. Were you happy with the outcome?
yeah, I mean, though I had got some comments. I mean, there was this comment by this guy who said, "Oh yeah, I used to be someone who like tries to help low income people until I felt bad for taking their money." But well, to me, how I translate that is that he has a disparity for low status people, and he also uh he also linked me to a site by Jordan Peterson, which obviously I have a lot of disagreements with that guy.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson doesn't have too many good opinions on things that he's not an expert in, unfortunately.
I mean, he's too much of a traditionalist and for my tastes.
Yeah, he's kind of gone off the deep end, unfortunately. So, how much did you? How much effort did you say would you put into that video, or did you put in that video? I suppose.
I mean, I'll say more effort than normal. I mean, wasn't a, it's not it's a pretty straightforward video.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I. The reason I ask is because I only ever made one really scripted video that I actually took time on,
Mhm.
and it took about a year to get like 1,000 views. But the topic of it was very niche. It was about a manga called Gantz, and not and it's a specific character in the manga, and like a little theory that I have about him. So like the market for that is basically non-existent. But I remember making this video, spending all this time. I actually learned to edit for it, and the end result was like, man, nobody really watched it. So I'm glad to hear that the video that you're most proud of also seems to be quite successful. So that's really awesome. I would say what like you mentioned why you have your channel, but like making your like first video, like what kind of inspired you that like I want to do this, that I want to like make
Well,
these YouTube videos.
I mean, my channel's pretty old, but my channel used to be something else. I mean, I mentioned before I was like into this TradCon freedom movement stuff. And I kind of made videos on that, but then I deleted all of them, and now I just rebranded it. So
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I just thought like I can't be silent anymore. I just and like my first video was kind of like a Bernie Sanders edit. It says like it's just me like but I didn't use unlike videos nowadays. I didn't actually use AI to like have him say something that was not saying. I just copied some quotes from his other speeches and put it into his speeches that he was making it. So it was like it was about him saying that like just recording Martin Luther King Jr. About how like it's how it's cap how it's a capitalist how it's rugged individualism for the poor and socialism for the rich. But instead I like kind of switched it up a bit and it said, oh, it's we live in a socialism for women and rugged individualism for men because that's kind of how I see the society.
Yeah. Do you do you think it's all women that benefit from that kind of like framework or that like idea, or do you think there's women that are just not benefiting from this kind of like societal structure at all?
I mean, there's a lot of people in this world, so I don't like generalizing everything, but usually I think women tend to benefit more, in my opinion, and that's kind of why you see like a lot of channels of men ranting about their struggles because and not so much about women.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I kind of well, we're coming up on a actually no, we're over an hour now, so I should probably wrap. I want to wrap things up a little bit, but there was something I thought was interesting. I had a strong motivation to reach out to you, and I want to ask you why you think that before I tell you the truth. It's not like a bad thing or anything or whatever, but I'm just curious what you thought.
I mean, I guess you just wanted to see what like why I'm making videos like this because the niche of my channel is and it's kind of like one of those like taboo subjects that I mean it's not one of those things that people talk about much, which is men's issues. Because usually like when you see like channels that are supposedly for men, most of these channels are about self improvement and how men should change themselves to impress others. and how they should become rich, how they should gain status. But this type of channel I have, it's more about it just shows it just exposes like how stressful it is to be a man, and how I argue that it's much worse to be a man than it is to be a woman. I mean, of course, everyone has struggles, but I think men's struggles are worse, and they're not. And the worst thing is that they're not talked about as much.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We don't have the same worldview,
Mm-hmm.
but I do agree with you. And I have a few stories. So my first day of college, I went to college when I was 24. I almost didn't graduate high school. I was a complete loser, and I show up to orientation for my local. It's like a 500-person campus school. It doesn't exist anymore, but I show up and they have orientation, and two women from the SARC are there, which is the Sexual Assault Resource Center, and I still remember this clear as day. They say at one point, unfortunately, men commit most of the rapes, so men stop raping, which was phenomenally tone deaf to me because I am a man who was a victim of female sexual abuse. So,
Mm.
for hearing that day one, already accused of being a rapist, I suppose, I was kind of floored. So, that was like the most insane thing. And then, kind of, I think I watched, I think one of your other videos kind of talked about like, women and men in college and things. And when I transferred to a big school, I started off at a small school and I transferred to a big school. And in this school had twice the population of my hometown. And you had to take certain like non-curricular activities. I don't even know what to describe them, but you had to do these things in order to graduate. And one of them, you had to take it like the first year that you were there. It was just some activity related to boundaries and like sexual engagements and like drinking and all this kind of stuff. And there was one going on, so I was like, oh, I can check it off by going to this like play or something. I don't even know what it was. And the whole thing was basically there are rapist dude bros who are dude bros and don't respect women, and guys are gonna rape women. And it's like I'm not in a frat and I'm not planning on raping anybody, so I don't really need like what about myself as a victim? And I've never heard anything ever spoken to that in my life. So to kind of validate your point, men's issues are not really talked about. I've never in my life heard ever any kind of like statement about caring for male victims of sexual assault or violence ever in my life. It's always directed towards women, which is it's
Mm-hmm.
good that it's directed somewhere, but holy fuck, it kind of shocks me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
yeah, I agree. I agree that there's a problem. We don't share too much of the same worldview, but there's definitely something wrong. They
mm-hmm.
did, yeah. I think the funniest thing that I remember was there was like a quiz that you had to do afterwards about like safe drinking or whatever. And in it, it was like, okay, if one person is drinking and the other person isn't drinking, who can consent or whatever. And the end result was that if 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 the woman was drinking and the man wasn't, then the woman couldn't consent. Okay, yeah, sure, he could be sober and whatever, and she could be not in her right mind. Okay, sure, fine. But then if the man and woman were both drinking, the correct answer was that the man was at fault, and in that was like, what the fuck? How if the man and woman are both drinking and they both want to have sex, how is anyone at fault? They're both at fault. They both want to have sex. What's the problem?
Uh,
I don't know. I thought that was insane. But
yeah.
yeah, what would you? I guess if you could have like a space, like you could make like a place or a change in society, you know, I don't know, maybe change the law or something. What would you do?
Well, first of all, I think there at least needs to be a. I think one change I would like to make is that there has to be a there needs to be less stigma upon like men opening up, and also there has to be less stigma on late blooming, because that's one thing that personally affects me. I mean, this society, like I don't feel like people, but especially men, are allowed to be late bloomers without any repercussions.
Yeah, and by like that late blooming, you just kind of like what, like coming into your own or getting that job experience, like those kind of things.
Yeah, just figuring out yourself.
Yeah.
And mhm. And also I think there also be like there needs to be at least a much more equal freedom of expression. Another thing I go on this channel is how I feel women have more freedom of expression than men do.
In what kind of way?
Um, well, as I mentioned before, like women are allowed to be shy more, and also women could like be tomboyish more, while men are not so much allowed to be slightly femboyish. And
Oh, yeah.
and in some like communities um in, in some communities women aren't really like called cringe as much as men do. Like before anime got popular, I mean, the types of like people you see being made fun of for liking anime were men, and not so much women. But now like it's popular nowadays. It's I feel like it's the whole like pendulum has swung to the other side. It's
Yeah, are you so I will start off, I guess I'll say I agree in a lot of ways a woman or women in general can kind of behave in a wider range of expression, and that's tolerated, and nobody, generally is going to like look down on them, in
yeah.
some exceedingly like, oh, you're not being a woman, you're not being feminine. But for a guy, if you like, I was a pretty weird guy. I'm just gonna admit. I actually wore some women's clothes in high school. Not that I was like really ever. I wasn't like transgender or nothing, but
Hmm.
I just I don't know. I do like doing different and fun things and weird things, and obviously, when I went to school and gay marriage wasn't legal, and people still hate gays, but so like if you did anything that was not accepted as like a guy, you basically just got called the F slur. That was it,
Hmm.
which I thought was funny to me because like people would say that, but like I think I had like four girlfriends in high school, or I mean, I went through a few girls, so it was like these guys are imposing this like expectation on me, but like the girls didn't give a fuck. It was all these like other loser guys who were like crabs in the bucket mentality trying to like drag me down to their level to be like, hey, don't express yourself this way because otherwise I'm going to call you an F slur. Meanwhile, I'm doing things with women that obviously are the exact opposite of being gay. So it was this kind of humorous moment, I think. So it's kind of one of those things where like it's always good to keep in mind of like who are the people that are creating the expectations, right? Like, and why are they doing it? And I think in that instance, it was just stupid idiots who were uncomfortable and insecure in their own expression, trying to like bring me
I
down to
don't think
them.
it's as simple as that. I mean, I think the reason why like men have less self expression is because of the gender expectations of society. Because men historically and even still today are expected to be providers. They're expected to gain status to attract the mate, or to at least be
Well, I mean,
accepted, or
society
just
wasn't stopping me from doing anything. Am
it's
I?
not about like
No.
society just stopping or anything. It's
Uh, I mean,
just
there's.
how like it's just it's how it's not about like in the legal sense, but even some countries like some countries lesbianism was legalized earlier than than men's homosexuality. That's
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing I found out recently.
That would make sense. That was the other thing I was going to bring up was that something I noticed in I've only seen this kind of like on like random things on 4chan, but it seems like in a lot of Asian countries, it's more tolerated Even more so for like female friends to be kind of like, very physically intimate, but also for guys to like be more physically intimate as well. Not as much as the women there as well, but like comparatively to like America, for example, it's like, if you saw those two guys, maybe you think they were like gay or something, or if you like see how close guys are in India or things like that, like it does seem like there is a greater tolerance for men being physically close to other men and not have it be this thing that is just immediately assumed as like gay, which I think
Mhm.
is kind of important because like part of just like expression is like, it just hugging somebody or whatever. Like my dad didn't hug me till I was like 23 years old, and I'm sure there's like a lot of like, like kind of cultural information there regarding like his decision to, I guess, withhold that kind of behavior, right? Like it's
Yeah.
one of these things where it's like he was told something that he believed that was, the expectation for what two guys or a father and son behave like to each other, and that was something that he wasn't able to kind of fight against. But I was a different person. I always fought against those kind of things because I always thought they were silly.
Mhm.
Well,
And another change I would
yeah,
make is it's definitely like to say that to put both like female circumcision, male circumcision as genital mutilation. I mean, I know this is kind of taboo, but I feel that there's already an inequality right there. I mean, there's one circumcision that's called like genital mutilation, the other one's not called that. I mean, that's personally how I would change it. Another change I would make it is I would definitely get rid of the I would get rid of the draft, but especially like the male only drafts. I mean, if you really want to draft, if you're really gonna make a draft, then just draft everybody. But like, but I'm like I'm against the draft period because I think the draft just tells you that like your life is no longer of value during an emergency because like because even though like it's not absolutely guaranteed you'll die in a conflict, the odds are not stacked in your favor.
yeah. No, I mean, I think that is like one of the clearer cases of that there is just a favored gender, right? Where it's like,
Hmm.
okay, if only men are being selected for the draft, I
And
mean, you're
and
clearly
and
picking somebody who has less value in society.
and then like and people even like try and mention like get philosophical and say, oh, what if this happens? What if you're in a situation where one person needs to sacrifice themselves and the other people have to be saved? I mean, I don't like when people bring this up because that doesn't really like go over like the structural issues of it, how it affects it. It's just only mentioning one certain scenario, but
Yeah, one of those kind of like hypotheticals. What was it? Someone making a sacrifice or choosing?
yeah, it's like, oh, if your ship is capsizing and there's and you're a man and you have your wife and your kids who are you going to sacrifice, and people would argue that, oh, the man should be sacrificed, and that just goes to show a lot what people think of men.
Oh, kind of like the Titanic and the boats kind of like situation where it's like, the women and children first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, even I argue that like women are favored more than children in society. And there's another thing I would like to mention. There's this thing called corporal punishment, and that's a lot of tricons support corporal punishment, but they tend to support for like especially boys because like they seem to be against like the idea of men, like doing whatever, doing what to women, but they're fine with like people beating. They're fine with parents beating kids up for sake of disciplinary services, and I think that's another inequality right there.
Like you think guys are beat up more than girls, or are more severe in terms of like physical punishment from like parents, or like
As parents, teachers,
the parent there's teachers hitting kids,
yeah,
and,
I mean
and
like
not they're not immediately
like
getting arrested and fired.
well, I mean even back then, like kids would kids would get like patted by the teachers.
Yeah, I mean it's probably I wonder when the last time that was a thing. Probably a while ago.
But there's some people that say that we should bring it all back.
Yeah,
There's this like
that's pretty
TikTok video.
crazy.
There's this TikTok video. of This like TradCon guy.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, make men great again." He's holding up these pads that are designed to hit them.
And that's what he thinks is gonna make men great is by beating them up.
Yeah, and the scary thing is that he's only doing that specifically for men. And that's another thing that kind of fueled my worldview.
Oh yeah, he's not saying that it's gonna like he's not even maybe not gonna apply that to women. Like the men need to get beat up in order to become great, I suppose.
Yeah, and like this book doesn't kill you, make a stronger mentality. Oh, or like bullying builds character mentality. Even that's not true. Like, oh, bullying builds character. Well, then to go ask the story about this homosexual boy who killed themselves. But I don't remember his name, but he was like, it was in like upstate New York, and there's this boy who was like he was bullied in school, and he ended up killing himself for it.
Yeah, I mean, those are just like it's. I mean, those like trad con ideas are just like patently false in almost every capacity. Like, there's nothing that points to any of those being ever like the right way to do anything ever at any point. Like, psychological studies tell us that when you use physical harm to conform behavior, the only thing that it really does is that it makes the person act more deceitful and dishonest towards the person who is providing the physical punishment, and
Mm.
then the only like they'll conform in the moment when that person is present, but it doesn't actually change the behavior long term at all. And the moment that that person separates from the physical punisher, then they just do whatever the hell they want. Like, it doesn't actually instill an expectation. So it's kind of funny that somebody would be advocating for that. But it makes sense that it would be a tradcon because tradcons are not smart people. Because I don't know how much if you've taken much history classes, but history was one of my favorite subjects in undergrad, and it's funny. Tradcons are generally people who are just government rubes. The whole idea of like traditional families was born out of a false idea that the federal government was feeding to America in response
Oh
to
yeah,
like the Cold War.
yeah,
And
because I know there's like a lot of these like groups that I mean there's a lot of these groups like that exist today like Council for National Policy, John Birch Society, Heritage Foundation. A lot of those groups have a huge influence on the TradCon influencers.
yeah, there's like
That's a
these like
whole
think
other topic.
tanks. Yeah, there's like these like political think tanks that like want to go back to a society that
And that's kind of
was
why I
all
distance
fat
myself from the
like
free.
facsimile.
That's why I distance myself from freedom movement because I found like all these people like a lot of these people are not really as genuine. They're not as down to earth as you think. A lot of them have like these secret connections.
Yeah, there's always something insidious when it comes to like a political movement that has ties to like these think tanks that have ties to like funding from, oil tycoons and billionaires and all this kind of shit. And the end result is that they're getting all the political gains that they want for to enrich themselves. Meanwhile, people are arguing over if women should be able to have jobs or not, and it's like that's not even the issue. Like that's just a distraction. Like,
Women really dominate the heel fields. If you ask me,
yeah,
there's a very, I mean, there's already push to get women to STEM, but even before that, there's a very like fields women have a strong dominance, and they have strong dominance in the education field. They have a dominance in therapy field, and I feel that's a really huge disadvantage to men having like women dominating the fields that where men need the most help in.
do you think I'm almost kind of seeing a connection there, but why do you think men go into these fields less? Like, why do women dominate
I
them, I
think
suppose?
I think it's just usually like I think my theory is that usually they tend to be favored because women are considered the empathetic gender in society.
So they're kind of like reared that way. They're they're nurtured that way throughout life, and then it's kind of
Not
something
just
that
nurtured,
naturally flows.
but usually like they're favored more in those fields. I mean, there's a lot of men who want to get into those fields. It's just they're usually not as favored as much.
Are you saying you think there's like a bias in like selecting who gets to go to like grad school for like therapy?
Yeah, I mean, there's also like female female scholarships as well.
Yeah, I mean, a scholarship is, well, I was about to say there aren't ones they can't. Well, you can't. The only standard is that you can set. I mean, you can set up a private scholarship that can have whatever metrics that you wanted, and that's what most scholarships are. But in terms of like federal support, you can't discriminate against a protected class, but you can exclude against. I don't know. It was interesting. That I actually had an experience with this that we were talking about, so I find it kind of interesting. I received the minority retention grant, which might be kind of confusing if you see my videos because I look very white. But I'm actually a member of a Native American tribe. My dad grew up on the reservation, and I even have a race card. And so I got the minority retention grant. It wasn't like a thing that I requested. It was just one of the things on my little financial aid thing that I could select. But it was interesting because it's a minority retention grant, so it excludes white people, which I thought was kind of stupid because it's like poor white people still need money too. Why do I get this just because I'm I technically have a minority status, but that's a whole kind of like dumb aspect of society that I think is kind of silly.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the men versus women thing, but like non-white versus white, where it's like, oh, if you're white, you have less access to financial means just because there are some wealthy white people, but it doesn't mean that all white people are wealthy.
Oh no, I don't believe all white people are all wealthy. I mean, there's plenty of white people that are not wealthy.
Yeah, yeah, right. And it's like, so in the same way that we should care for them, we should also like care for men, and give them access to means to do things that help the world, but also like raise them up to actually be the people that would want to do any of that work. I
Hmm.
mean, it took me a long time to go
I mean,
back.
with the teaching field, like I argue that like there's not much men that field because men are not as trusted with children as women are. I think that's one theory I have as to why the teaching field is not is female dominated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on where you live. Like where I live, a lot of the messaging that I get is that absolutely schools want more men teachers, absolutely in both in terms of like employment, but also like in terms of like people applying to be in the schools. But in the same way for like male therapists, like I mean, I work as a male therapist. I get jacked off every single place that I go. People are like, "Oh, like I'm so glad that you're here." There's uh, like like there's boys who want to like, oh, we would really prefer to like work with a male, and it's like it's really hard to find that. Like,
Hmm.
but the messaging that I see in my own experience is kind of the opposite of that. But then again, I live in a really liberal city, so that might just be a whole different kind of thing. Well, I mean, I don't work strictly in a liberal city. I should correct that because the places that I work all over the state of Wisconsin. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like your theory about how women are allowed to express themselves and they are viewed a certain way, well, kind of with the expectation that they are empathetic, right? And so that because they are viewed with this expectation, they kind of meet that expectation eventually. And then you'll go into these professions where they're supposed to care for people, nurse, teacher, medical field, whatever it is, the therapy, that kind of stuff, right? And men
Hmm.
aren't given that same kind of expectation, and
Yeah.
if they do that, if they show care or compassion, they're kind of viewed with suspicion. I mean, that was the case when I was younger, actually. I mean, if I was like kind, that wasn't treated as nice as if like a female peer was also like kind, which was strange to me. So I think that part kind of explains a bit more. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It depends on, I guess, where you are, and I know, United States varies wildly depending on state
I
to
mean,
state.
yeah, I'm on the West Coast.
But yeah, yeah. I mean, I know there's yeah. It's one of those kind of issues that's like at the local level, right? Wisconsin has its own set of problems. For a while, they were struggling to hire anybody at all, so they had to like lower the restrictions or the
Mm.
requirements to even be a teacher, which is a pretty interesting kind of thing. But yeah, I guess I don't know, I think it's. Let me see if I had any other questions here that I write down.
Hmm.
No, I think I went through everything that I had. Well, um, did you have any kind of like plugs for yourself that you'd want to make? I can link your YouTube channel in the description.
I mean, that's all I really have. That's all I have right now.
Oh, that sounds fine. Well, I'll look out and I'll check out your stuff, and I hope you have a good day.
Right, you too.
Thanks.